Let's get a look at this cool EufyMake personal UV printer. It prints with UV cured ink on almost anything, as long as it's flat or cylindrical. Despite not being a 3D printer, it can achieve some actually awesome 3D effects. I've been having an absolute blast with this thing, and we'll talk more about it in just a few seconds. Ready? Go! Hello 2D printing friends and welcome back. Okay, so today we're getting into the EufyMake personal UV printer. This video is sponsored by EufyMake and they sent this over so I could show you what it can do. So we'll cover what it is, how it accomplishes that cool 3D texture party trick, and I'll show you what I made with it so you'll have an idea what you can make with it. We should probably talk about what a UV inkjet printer even is. So you know how a typical home inkjet printer has an enormous number of super tiny nozzles that spray colored ink onto paper to form an image? A UV inkjet printer is like that, except it uses ultraviolet light to instantly dry the ink it applies to a surface. So while regular home or office inkjets only print on paper, UV printers can print on a wide variety of materials like plastic, glass, wood, metals, and ceramic. This type of printer is particularly popular for creating customized products like promotional items, packaging, signs, or phone cases. And the prints are sharp, colorful, and durable. So what does the E1 bring to the table? Well, unlike a typical home or office inkjet printer, the E1 can print on darn near anything as long as it fits on this bed and fits through the printer. For printing on cylindrical things like mugs, tumblers, and the like, a rotary printing accessory is available. And it can also do DTF or direct-to-film printing, so you can make your own custom stickers. This requires the use of the laminator accessory. The E1 uses a modular bed system with different sized beds and accessories that lock into place. Like the mini bed is in the printer right now. It's about 90 millimeters by 330 millimeters or 3.5 inches by 13 inches. It's small, but it's good for doing things like printing on magnets, stickers, and other small objects. I can unlatch it and lift it out and replace it with the rotary accessory. And I can unlatch that and lift it out and replace it with the standard bed, which is 420 millimeters by 330 millimeters or 16.5 inches by 13 inches. It's big enough to handle a 12-inch by 16-inch canvas. Both the standard bed and the rotary accessory are powered, but you don't have to mess around with plugging in wires or anything. The electrical connections are built into the printer where the beds and accessories latch into place. The E1 itself isn't really all that big either. With the mini bed or the rotary accessory in place, it can be operated with the front and rear doors closed. With the standard bed installed, you'll have to open those doors to make room for the bed's forward and back movement. Fortunately, the bed doesn't move much beyond the footprint of the doors. Loading the ink cartridges is remarkably simple. They just click into place, and then when you need to replace one, it clicks back out, kind of like the clicker on a pen. It also automates a lot of the maintenance that UV printers need. The set of ink cartridges that came with the printer also included a cleaning cartridge that mounts in the right side of the printer. It contains cleaning fluid and also collects the ink that gets purged when cleaning and priming the printhead. When the printer is left on and sitting idle, it periodically maintains the printhead. And when you shut the printer down, which can take several minutes, the printer gets the printhead ready for not being used for a while. So that's something I really appreciate. A long time ago, I quit using inkjet printers at home precisely because if I let an inkjet printer sit for any length of time, the printhead built into the ink cartridge would dry out and no amount of cleaning would ever get it working again. So I'd have to go buy another $70 ink cartridge to print 20 pages, and then a month later I'd have to do it all over again. Maybe they're better these days, but that's my lived experience with consumer inkjets. The EufyMake E1 gets it right with its automatic maintenance. I'm sure you've seen a ton of videos about this printer already. I know they're out there. I won't let myself watch them until this one's out. So forgive me if everything I do here is something you already saw. But I want to do some projects with the E1 that I personally think are pretty cool, because this can print on almost anything as long as it's mostly flat or cylindrical. EufyMake sent along a lot of different things for me to print on, just a ton of stuff of all different types, which was really great. And so now it's time to show off some of these projects. Like I said, I've been having a blast with it. The first thing I printed on the E1 was this cool little fridge magnet. I'd seen an image like this before and I thought it was cool. I used ChatGPT to create the cat because I hadn't yet discovered that I could use the AI image generator in EufyMake Studio to do it. I imported the image into Studio and figured out how to add the text, change the font, and set its color. Then I got Studio to take a snapshot of the bed. That let me see the magnet's location on the bed, and I could resize and rotate the CAD image. I find the positioning to be pretty accurate, but I also like to set the image to be ever so slightly larger than the object I'm printing on to make sure I get full coverage. Then it was just a matter of sending the job to the printer and pressing the printer's start button to get it going. And about 4 minutes later, I had a finished magnet. I think it turned out really great, and because the ink is UV cured as it prints, it was ready to stick onto something ferrous. Here's another cool one. I wanted to label this cheap flash drive with its capacity and also put my BV3D logo on it. Flash drives with a company logo on them? That would be a great idea for something to sell online or to local businesses. So I added a rounded square shape and the 8GB text, took a snapshot of the mini bed, positioned the label, and printed it directly onto the flash drive. Then I flipped it over and did the same thing with my logo. Print time was 3 minutes for the capacity label and 2 minutes for the logo. Not bad for 5 minutes worth of printing. I also wanted to see firsthand how the E1's 3D prints from a 2D printer looked in person, and how it worked. For this, I searched for Dragon in the Projects section, and I chose this ready-to-print design, square dragon magnet with a red leather background. So I put the magnet on the bed and took a snapshot of it. Then I positioned and rotated and scaled the design so it covered the magnet. I clicked the preview button to see how it was actually going to look, and that 3D effect looks super cool. Even though it's a 2D printer, the E1 is able to make what amounts to a 3D print the same way a 3D printer does, by building up layers of material, ink in this case. I believe it uses mostly the white ink to build up the layers, then it prints the color on top when it needs color. It does mean that prints done with a 3D texture effect are going to be more expensive to make, both in terms of the time it takes and the amount of ink, because it's printing certain parts of the image multiple times to get that layering. And where the cat magnet only took a few minutes to print, this took an hour. But oh man, is that end result cool. At its thickest, this is almost a 1/4 inch thick, about 5 millimeters, on top of the magnet. In my mini air hockey table video, I printed the tabletop in a plain white filament, but I thought it might be cool to add some of the same kinds of markings that you'd see on a real air hockey table. So I drew them in a graphics app and imported the image into EufyMake Studio. The air hockey tabletop is larger than will fit on the mini flatbed, so I swapped that out for the standard bed. The latching system makes that super easy, and it only takes a couple of seconds. I didn't record the process of taking a snapshot and positioning the image, but those steps apply here just like in the previous prints. Using the standard bed requires printing with the front and rear doors open, so be safe and put on the UV blocking glasses. Then, one cool ultraviolet disco light show later, and I have a new top for the air hockey table. This was about a 15-minute print. One thing I figured out later is that I had a white background on the graphic that I created, so the printer printed white ink along with the red. In this instance, that was unnecessary, and it used a lot of white ink that it didn't need to. But that's the beauty of a printer with white ink. If you send a picture to print onto, say, a blue object, and that picture is supposed to have a white background, it will get a white background, and it'll look like it's supposed to. So, what's next? Well, knowing that the E1 can print on just about anything that fits inside it, especially if it's flat, I pulled out an old MacBook Air. I thought it would be cool to print something like a dragon on it, and so I used the AI image generator in EufyMake Studio to do it. Following the now familiar snapshot, place, and print routine, I got this result. It looked absolutely amazing, but there was an issue. Despite having thoroughly cleaned the top of the computer with alcohol, the printing could be easily dislodged with a fingernail. In fact, with a bit of care, I was able to completely remove it as a single piece. Like I said, the E1 can print on almost anything. Apparently that doesn't include Apple laptops. Whatever surface finish Apple applies to its products, it kinda doesn't work well with UV printing. There are a couple of ways to work around this though. One would be to print this as a sticker instead, then cut it out and apply it to the laptop. But there's another way, using something UV printing pros know as an adhesion promoter, or UV primer. And that's something that EufyMake let me know that they're working on, and it should be available sometime soon. And here's another option. Find a blank laptop hardshell cover. This just snaps onto the laptop. I bought one for this 16-inch MacBook Pro on Amazon, and again, I used the AI image generator. This time, I asked it to create a futuristic cityscape. This hard shell was clear, but I think it would have been better if I had bought a black one instead. At any rate, I think it came out pretty good, and it's a great way to make custom covers for laptops. And not just for Apple stuff. You can find these on Amazon for lots of other brands as well. One of the cool things that EufyMake included in the stuff they sent me was this light box kit. This has a nice aluminum frame with USB-powered LED lighting inside and comes with like 5 or 6 thin acrylic sheets you can print on. Here I printed a fiery dragon that I thought looked cool. With all the acrylic sheets they included, you can print several different things to suit your mood and easily swap them out. The frame has a door that's held closed with magnets, so opening it, swapping the image, and closing it is a snap. One thing I wish the Lightbox kit had that it doesn't have is dimmable lighting. Depending on the image, you might want a little less light behind it. Maybe that's something EufyMake will change or offer as an option. Remember that 3D dragon magnet I printed earlier? Here's another cool 3D effect that the E1 can do. You can load a photo into EufyMake Studio and make it look like an oil painting. This happens in the creative lab part of the studio. Specifically, photo to brushstroke art. I brought in a picture of my kid playing violin at a concert and used that. Once it creates the effect, you can see the 3D version of it on screen before you print it. You can rotate it and zoom in or out to see the details. Then you can do the usual snapshot and position process. The canvases EufyMake provided fill the entire standard bed on the E1, and this took 4 hours and 47 minutes to print. I actually left the room while this was printing for a variety of reasons. Mostly because of how long this was going to take to finish. Plus, because the front and rear doors were open, I didn't want to hang around with the UV glasses on that whole time. And the smell of the ink can get pretty strong when it's open like that, but the end result was so worth the time. It turned out amazing. So one of the things we're going to do this summer is go on a road trip. It seemed like a good excuse to make some tumblers we can use on the trip. So I came up with this design in my usual graphics application. The tumblers require the rotary printing accessory, and it just latches into the printer in place of the bed. This only took about 12 minutes to print, so it was super quick. And then I had a fun idea that involved these tumblers. State stickers! I thought it would be fun to put a sticker on our tumblers every time we crossed into a new state on the trip. For stickers, you can make your own artwork or buy it, and then import it into EufyMake Studio and print it out on the sticker film. You put the sticker sheet down on the bed and then peel off a clear film to expose the adhesive. It's a little weird because when you print, you're printing directly onto the adhesive. After printing, you run the sticker sheet through the laminator to apply a protective clear film over the top of it. Then you cut out the stickers. To stick them onto something, remove the paper backing and stick them on. A full sheet of stickers takes about 35 minutes to print, and laminating just takes another minute or so. So those are some of the things that I made with the EufyMake E1. So here are a few improvements I think the E1 needs, and it's pretty much all software related, though one thing is hardware, I think. And the software has already been updated a few times since I got the E1, so EufyMake may already have fixes in the works. So the printer knows when a particular cartridge is out of ink, and it prompts you to replace it. This happened when I was printing that oil on canvas print. I knew that was going to take a while to do, so I left the printer to do its thing, while I did something else somewhere else. After about an hour of doing its thing, the printer paused, and the EufyMake Studio desktop app displayed a notification window indicating which cartridge was empty. But somehow that notification got hidden behind the main application window. And the main window had a less informative message, basically saying it was paused because an ink cartridge was empty. At the same time, I got a notification on my phone and my watch with the same basic printing paused, replace ink cartridge message, but it didn't say which cartridge. So, like I said, this happened on the oil on canvas print. It's a big image, and it uses a lot of white ink to build up the brushstroke effect. So I suspected the white cartridge had run out. When I looked closely at the cartridges in the printer, I saw a faint red LED lit up at the white cartridge, so that confirmed it for me. And so I replaced that cartridge and resumed the print. But I think the cartridge LEDs should be brighter. This one was really hard to see. And speaking of cartridges, I think it would be super handy if the EufyMake app could show you the approximate ink levels. Right now, the ink management section of the app window makes it look like all the cartridges are full. If it showed those squares partially filled to indicate the amount of ink remaining, I think that would be really useful. One other thing I'll mention is that the E1 really needs to be used in an area where you've got good ventilation. The E1 has an internal air filter, and it does a pretty okay job of keeping the ink smell filtered and contained when using the mini bed or the rotary printing accessory because the front and rear panels on the printer are closed. But once you open those up to do a print on the standard bed, there's nothing that filter can really do. It's printing in open air, so the odor of the ink can get kind of strong. But I want to close on a positive note because I really do like this printer. It fits easily on a countertop or desk. It doesn't take up a lot of room when it's in use, and it takes up even less when the doors are closed and it's pushed back out of the way. For me, as a 3D printer user, I find it to be a complementary tool as opposed to a competing tool. If, for example, I was 3D printing and selling an electronics enclosure and I wanted to have a logo or control labels on the front of it, such as knobs that go to 11, for example, modeling those things into the design would take extra time, and they would also take extra time to print on a multicolor printer. Plus, small details in the text might not come out great. By adding the E1 into the mix, I could 3D print the cases in a single color, and then load them into the E1 and UV print the labels and logos directly onto the parts. That's what I did with the mini air hockey tabletop to get the markings on it. And I could even print white text onto a black part, and it would work great. The E1 has white ink after all. So that's the EufyMake E1 UV printer. It's a 2D printer that can do some 3D stuff. Thanks to EufyMake for sending this over, thank you for watching, and big thanks to everyone who supports the channel, whether with channel memberships or by using the links in the description. If you liked this episode, give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe so you don't miss new ones. Well, 3D printing friends, that's about all the time we have for this one. And now that we're at the end, let's go print something cool, whether in 2 dimensions or 3.